let me just introduce myself to you just a bit. I am one of the lucky people who gets to love going to work every single day. I am a child therapist, and I get to use play therapy to help kids overcome some of the most difficult things that maybe you could ever imagine, and maybe things beyond what you could imagine. My life is full of play. I get to just play. I get to show up, and in my office there's Potato Head, there's Legos, there's Connect 4, there's dance ribbons, there's instruments, there's all sorts of things where kids can show up and show me what their world is like. It is so much fun when you incorporate play into your life. When you can find things that just allow you to play, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And just like I said, I get to work with the coolest kids in the entire world. In play therapy, we say that play is a child's language and toys are their words. Play is a child's language and toys are their words. Alice, if you would put up the picture of the brain, I'm going to show you just a couple things, and there is no test over this, so don't worry. We are just playing here today, just playing. We're just going to figure this out. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about the brain and how it all works together. That green part at the bottom, that is two different pieces of the brain. The kind of bubbly part in the back is called the cerebellum. The cerebellum helps us with motor coordination, staying balanced. It's one that I am not very good. My cerebellum is not strong. I fall over, bump into stuff, knock stuff over all of the time. So there's the cerebellum and the brain stem. The brain stem is the part that attaches to the spine. It regulates your heart rate, your breathing, digestion, all those things that kind of keep you alive. That's the brain stem. So brain stem, cerebellum. The blue piece back there, that's called the occipital lobe. The occipital, now, I see you were like, I know what that is. The occipital lobe has to do with our sight. Okay, so anything that you see kind of goes in, bounces back into this occipital lobe part right there. The pink part in the middle, that part is called the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe has a lot to do with sound, so music and emotions all kind of happen in that pink part there. Then there's the yellow part. It's on top, kind of back here in the middle. That's called the parietal lobe, and that has to do with touch. So it kind of covers all the senses there. And then this purple part in the front, that is called the frontal lobe. Are you with me so far? Do you remember all the names? You don't need to. All you need to know is that each part of the brain kind of focuses on a different sensation, on a different sense, on a different feeling. It has a different job. And then this purple part in the front helps us as adults bring it all together. The problem is that children under the age of 12 don't have much of a frontal lobe. You probably know this. Many of you are looking and you're like, that's why they can't get it. Because their frontal lobe can't bring all this information together. They're taking in all this sensory information, they're learning all these different things, their heart rate is regulated, all this stuff, but they have no idea what that means to bring it all together. Well, what play does is it engages all of the senses. So it engages touch and sight and sound and your motor coordination, your balance. It engages all of those things all at once so that even if you don't have that frontal lobe, it allows you to make connections in ways that you wouldn't be able to if you only had a frontal lobe. Now also, the frontal lobe isn't fully formed until around age 25 to 27, and many of you are looking at me nodding like, yeah, I know, it is not. You cannot make good decisions until after that point. And even after that, no good. So that's how the brain all works together. Well, kids, so many times with children, we look at them and we say, why did you do that? And the kid will go, I don't know. And parents will come to me and they'll say, I asked them why they did it and they didn't even have an answer for me. And I'll say, they probably don't know. They have no idea why they did it. All they know, their brain received some sensory information, they responded, they reacted to it. They didn't have time to respond, to think about what to do. That's the frontal lobe. They can't do that. They just reacted. And so what play does is it allows children to synthesize information without a frontal lobe. It's a beautiful, amazing thing where kids can learn different concepts without ever having to be able to synthesize it all themselves. They can play with it. And as they play with it, the temporal lobe starts to get a little excited, and then parietal lobe gets a little excited, and the occipital lobe gets a little excited, and the cerebellum gets a little excited, and all these pieces work together. And now they've synthesized that information. But really, I'd say that's all of us. How many of you, if you were just to hear someone stand up and go, okay, today we're going to learn about play and how the brain reacts in different situations. Let's open to page 1. Right? No, you don't learn like that. You learn by engaging, by playing with the different material. Learning using multiple senses integrates it deeply into the brain. Rather than it all just having to sit in one place, it uses the whole brain to pull it all together and bring it all in. Did you learn best when you were just having to sit and stare at a book, or did you learn best from those teachers who brought teaching to life? Do you know more about someone, the way that someone loves you, by them looking at you and saying, I love you? Or do you know that they love you by those glances that you can give each other? And if you just give that glance, that's it. You know, there's where that love is. Do you know more by the words, or do you know more by the way that you interact with each other? Well, the science is clear. Science actually says that it takes around 400 repetitions for someone to learn something new, to create a new synapse. That's what we call it in the brain. It's basically learn something new. 400 times. That's why when you say, I told them 10 times to pick that up, I'd say you got 390 left to go. They still don't know how to clean up their room. They've been doing it for weeks. You've got years left to go. 400 times in order for a new thing to be learned in the brain, unless it is done in play. In which case, it only takes between 10 and 20 repetitions. As we think about godly play, as we think about children learning about the Bible, our repetitions, the reps that we have, are experiences for children coming into this building. Let's say that a child comes every single week for a whole year. That means that they get 52 repetitions. So, taking all that science into mind, what that means is that we can either teach them one thing over 8 years, 400 reps, or we can teach them 5 new things every single year if we'll use play. Why? Because they don't have this thing that helps them remember it. But if they're playing, it all synthesizes in there together.